Progress.
Shabbos Parshas Devarim, Shabbos Chazon, the 6th of Menachem Av, Tavshin Lamed Gimel. And the Rebbe is going to speak about, of course, how everything is transformed into the positive and the good, even though it might seem otherwise externally, which is really the theme of a lot of our Shiurim about this, especially when it comes to the 9 days. The Shabbos Chazon concerning the Shabbos of Chazon, the Shabbos Shalifnei Tisha B'Av, the Shabbos prior to Tisha B'Av, Shnikras al Shem Aschol Saftoid. That's called. Why is Shabbos Chazon called Shabbos Chazon? Because the beginning of the Haftorah begins with the words Chazon Yeshayahu. It's the vision of Yeshayahu. Shabam Mesaimim, that in this Haftorah. Sorry about that. In this Haftorah, we conclude the three haftorahs of things that are shbehem duber oidis hepech hanachamed, and them speaks about the opposite of comfort. The Rebbe's way of referring, as we know, there's 7 haftorahs of comfort, and 3 that are the opposite of comfort. Which is, again, the Rebbe avoiding negative language and so on. So it's the last one. We're finally concluding this series of 3 haftorahs, which is really of a negative form. So he says, "Harikim sheklos in nachur ukadei shelachrizet yinacham bekiflaim." Since the entire reason for the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash was to bring afterwards the double form of comfort, that the comfort should be in a manner of being doubled, extra comfort than before. So behechrach loimar, we must say, shebenachama zu atzma, shebaftoida zu atzma, and this very haftoida itself. Yesh nagam inyan shuhepech hachurban. There's also the idea of something that's the opposite of destruction. So the purpose, that Rebbe says, must manifest itself also in the actual means to bring to that purpose. And that's the whole point that the Rebbe is going to say here for the next few paragraphs, is that it's not just the means to bring to a good end, but the very means themselves, the very seemingly negative things, are really good, but hidden. So he says in line 4, by prefacing, how must we say this? What forces us to say this? That even the parts of the Haftorah, or even the Haftorah of this week that speaks about things that are the opposite of comfort, are really in truth the opposite of destruction. Because the proof of this is Mashat Torah, in the class Torah is class of the Torah, is called the Torah of kindness. Not only is it in general, and its goal is the idea of kindness, but every single detail in Torah is in and of itself, not just its goal, an idea of kindness. When we say that the Torah is a Torah of kindness, it just doesn't mean that it's a means to an end of kindness, but it means that the very means itself, every single part of Torah, is a Torah of kindness. What makes me say so? Maybe it's only a means to an end, but it itself may not be the whole time kind. He says, Torah is a Torah of truth. The idea of truth in its true fashion is not just concerning the end of the matter, the goal of the matter, that the goal of Torah is to be a goal of truth, but rather concerning all the details of it. From its beginning to its end, like it's hinted in the word emes. Shemurkeves megimel ha'oisius. The word emes is made up of the three letters. Shehem hascholas, the letter aleph, ve'emtza in the middle, the letter mem, ve'saif in the end, taf ha'oisius. It's the letters that make up the first, last, and middle of all the letters, which means lahoidus. This shows us she'inyan ha'emes u'mitchilosiv atzayfer. The idea of truth is from the beginning all the way through the end. But if we'll say that one detail only is a means to truth, but it itself is not truth, Nimtza comes out, that only the majority of it is true and not in its entirety. Therefore we must say, every detail in itself is true. It's not possible to have the opposite of truth in any part of Torah. And therefore, when Torah proclaims itself a Torah's chesed, a Torah of kindness, so there's no part of the Torah that's not kindness. Every part of the Torah must be kind as well. So I said, in line 11, also the punishments of Torah are matters of kindness. Not only something that brings or that results in kindness, rather that it itself is kindness in and of itself. But we don't see it. It could be that the kindness is not revealed since it's concealed and covered over. But it's there concealed. All it has to be is be brought out from its concealed state to its revealed state. Upon him through at least an easy avoidam. Like the sun coming out of its sheath, like it's explained in Tanya, that those that accept suffering with joy or with love, so they will merit the sun coming out of its sheath when Mashiach comes. In other words, they will bring forth that the hidden good will become revealed good. The Rebbe says in line 15, he goes on, similar to the idea about what we say about Nochem Ish Gamzu, that he said, also this is for good. Like we spoke about at one time, about this idea about this is also for good. Concerning the difference between when Rabbi Akiva said that everything that Hashem does, He does it for good, Shamar Rabbi Akiva, which means it's a means towards a good end, but not necessarily that the thing itself is good. Versus this is also good that Nachum Ish Gamzu said that the difference between these two is Shalatav Elvid Pirushay, where it says it's for the good, it's he's doing it for the good. Pirushay, this means that from this will eventually result a good matter. Like for example, in the situation that the candle was extinguished by Rabbi Akiva, where he was outside the city and his candle went out, and the other things that occurred to him. So what happened over there, the fact that he had to be in the dark without a candle was not a good thing. But afterwards the good came about, that he wasn't found out by the robbers, he wasn't attacked by them. As opposed to this is also for good. Its meaning is not only does it mean that afterwards it occurs good as a result, but at the moment it's bad. Rather, this itself is good. Rather, initially the good is not visible in a revealed way. But there was a need to reveal the good that was in it. Like for the case that they switched the precious stones, etc., with earth that the Nachmish Gamzu was bringing to Caesar, and robbers switched it out and caused him that when he opened up this gift that he was trying to bring to Caesar so that they can stop persecuting the Yidden or lessening the persecutions against the Yidden. So when they opened up for earth and they saw that was earth, it was a very big insult to the king. But afterwards they tried it out. Afterwards, this dust and earth was transformed to spears and missiles. Through them, the king that it was brought to defeated his enemies. It's not just that this earth became eventually and transformed to something good eventually, but now it's bad. Rather that the earth itself was something good. The sand itself that they filled it with was good. Even more, it was better even than precious stones. The king already has precious stones. Skip the parentheses. As opposed to this miraculous sand and earth, it assisted the king in such a way that he couldn't do before. There was a country, like the Medrash tells the story, that the king couldn't subdue. So therefore, this was the real good that this happened. So just like we find in the case of Nachum Ish Gamzu, that's not just a means to an end that's good, but the means itself is good. So the Rebbe continues in line 24, last paragraph on the page. From this, it's also understood concerning the Haftarah of Shabbos Chazon, since it's a part of the Torah of truth in all of its details. Since it's a Torah of truth in all of its details, it has not just something that brings about afterwards a double comfort, like we have in the Haftarah, in the Shabbos following Tisha B'Av, that says twice Nachamu, but rather also prior to reaching the open Nachama and open comfort, we also have the double idea of, we also have chesed in it. So how do we have chesed in it? So the Rebbe goes on the next page. The idea behind this is the simple meaning of the vision of Yeshayahu. It's the vision of prophecy that Yeshayahu Hanavi saw about the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. That is the content of the entire Haftarah that we're going to read this upcoming Shabbos. Excluding the final pasuk of the Haftarah, where the final pasuk says, that Zion will be redeemed with mishpat and its returnees or captives with tzedakah. How does one become redeemed from the vision of Yeshayahu, which we said is negative? It's through mishpat and tzedakah. As opposed to everything else up till there in the Haftarah are matters that are the opposite of positivity and comfort and so on. I will be along with that simple reading of the text of the Haftarah. It's known the explanation of the Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Ditchever. Like we spoke about many times, it's already printed. Shabbos Chazon Mar HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'chol Echad Miyisrael HaMikdash L'Osid. When Shabbos Chazon, Hashem shows every single Yid the future Beis Hamikdash. V'hainu shu kvar mucham legamri, that it's already completely ready. Banu Meshuchel, it's built and ready to go. Kach shekol echad yachol leroisei, to such a degree that it's so ready that everybody can see it. V'ad shinizen nimshach gam b'loshen targum, until this even comes down in translation. Chazon shua targum shoriyah. The word chazon is a translation of the word seeing. Like we find this word chazon in the pasuk mipsari exalaka from my flesh I will see godliness. The expression of Targum, translation, is a language that has to do with the world, skip the brackets. By using the term Chazon, the Rebbe emphasizes this means even from the perspective of the world, even from the limitations of the world, we could see the Beis HaMikdash. So the Rebbe goes on to say, but we don't see it. It's the fact that we don't see it with our physical eye. That's because our physical eye is unworthy of seeing the Beis HaMikdash. Because the person did not yet reach the perfection and the completion of his avodah and refining the body. Immediately when he will reach the perfection of his service, he can see it. Moving, it's understood the fact that the person did not yet complete refining his body does not change the fact that the Beis HaMikdash is standing ready, etc. It's not just the Rebbe found one word in the Haftorah, Chazon Yishayahu, and the Rebbe Levi's Barditchever says Chazon is a vision of the Beis HaMikdash, and that's it. There's an entire Haftorah that seems to have things that are negative. So the Rebbe says no, that even other psukim throughout the Haftorah, that internally they are good. Like the Rebbe Barditchev explains the meaning of these psukim in their positive aspect, though they are have negative external meaning. For example, the Rebbe says, Am keved oven, a nation that is heavy in sin. So the Pnimius explanation is she'inyan ha'oven hu eslam dover kaved, that the idea of sin is something heavy and difficult for them. It's difficult, it's hard for them to transgress an Aveda. Similar to what it says in the Zohar and the Pasuk, in the beginning of Chumash Vayikra, where it talks about the karbanos that a person does if they sin. So the Zohar says that where it says in the Pasuk, v'nefesh kisechta, a soul that will sin, a person that will sin, you got to read it with a question mark. Tevaha, it's a wonder. In other words, don't read it v'nefesh kisechta, but you have to read v'nefesh kisechta. Can a soul sin? It's impossible. In a similar vein is the explanation of when we say Am keved oven. It's too hard for this nation to do sins. And to note that this explanation in the words a nation that's heavy, that sin is heavy for them, is it's not an explanation according to the Zohar, a matter of Kabbalah. It has to do with the simple reading of the text. The word keved, we didn't give it a different explanation than the simple meaning. The word keved means heavy and difficult. So the Rebbe asks, if this is what it means, so why don't we be looking at Rashi, Radak, Mitzudas David, Mitzudas Sion? We don't find anybody explaining the pasuk in this type of manner. And the reason why the Mefarshim prior to Rebbe Yitzchak Barditchever did not explain it this way, it's because this topic was still in the concealed levels of kindnesses. When we come closer to the time of Mashiach's coming, this Gala Dover, the matter became revealed. Until this becomes the simple meaning. According to the simple meaning of the text, that Am Keved Oven means it's a nation that's difficult for them to sin. And then the Rebbe says, back to the beginning of the Haftorah about Chazon. If the Yidden are, it's difficult for them to sin, we can understand that the Beis HaMikdash is with us. This is understood. Shabbos Chazon yesh kvar initial geula is Beis Hamikdash, and Shabbos Chazon there's already the idea of the redemption, seeing the Beis Hamikdash. Yesh lahoyse b'zeh we could add to this. Shekim shemedu b'roi desiriyas Hamikdash the law said, since we're talking about seeing the Beis Hamikdash of the future in Mashiach's times, how movements that's understood Shazel initial toiv v'chesed. It's an idea of goodness and kindness. Loi rak lagabahay ma'imid of matzav shebizman hagolos. Not only is it good and kind in comparison to now when we're in Golos, Beis Hamikdash, seeing the Beis Hamikdash, wow, that's great, even though we're in Golos. But it's great even comparison to when there was the other Bati Mikdashes. It has a quality and advantage also over the first and second Beis Hamikdash. Was explained at length in the Farbrengens prior to this Farbrengen, where the Rebbe explained that the first Beis Hamikdash and the second Beis Hamikdash were built by humans. The first Beis Hamikdash was built through Shlomo HaMelech, and the second Beis Hamikdash was built through the Persian king Kodesh and Hordus, the Hashmonai king. Remodeled it and rebuilt it. As opposed to the third Beis Hamikdash will be a building of Hashem, like we say every day and morning in davening. Mikdash Adonai Kohen Yudecha, Mikdash Hashem were prepared by your hands. That's why it will never be destroyed. But Iker, the main thing is that seeing the future Beis Hamikdash. What's the purpose of this vision? It's to effect that it should actually come down here in this world. Like it's explained over there, the metaphor. A father has a precious son, and he made for him an expensive garment, and the child ruined it once, and the child ruined it a second time. Until the father made for his son a third garment, but he didn't give it to the son to wear it, but he put it away for him. Special times, from time to time, he shows him the suit of clothes, and he tells him, see, if you will act in the appropriate manner, you'll be given this garment to wear it. Because of this way of showing him what he can earn, he accustoms him, he gets him into the habit of acting in a non-wild manner where he won't be destroying his garments, until it becomes second nature to him, or becomes his nature to not be running around wild in his clothes. Then he gives him the garment, because he's not worried that the child will destroy it again, because he's trained him, and now it's become natural to him to take care of his clothes. So too, in the analog, what the message of this mashal is, the intention of this is that we show every single one the future Beis Hamikdash to awaken by everyone the will and the desire that they should actually give it to him in actuality. This affects the child to change the way he acts. In other words, the Jewish people, that the Yidden will be shown the Beis Hamikdash, and all these times, and this will affect us to change the way we're acting. Shazel close in Yan Tshuva, that's a general idea of Tshuva, to change from the way we were acting up to now. Through a thought of Tshuva, even a thought of Tshuva, a person becomes a complete tzaddik with the way the Gemara rules. Then the true and complete redemption comes immediately. Like Mashiach said, and Eliyahu said, that today he will come if you listen to his voice. In the Simcha in such a way that it's an everlasting joy upon their head. When what we said earlier about Shabbos Chazon being internally an idea of comfort. This has to be understood to every single Yid, even the most ordinary, most simplest Jew. Like the expression of the pasuk concerning Mashiach's times, because all will know me, from their most minor to the greatest. Ella, but the only thing is that, like I mentioned before, that pasuk says about Mashiach's time. That pasuk is speaking about the time following the coming of Mashiach. The Rebbe says, even when we've still found in the time of Golus, then there has to be the idea that you will be collected one by one, the Bnei Yisrael. So this matter has to be understood to every single Jew. They need to be able to appreciate and understand how this Shabbos is also a Shabbos of Nechama. And therefore, this idea is hinted immediately at the beginning of the Haftorah, the vision of Yeshayahu. The simple meaning of Yeshayahu is from the expression of salvation. That's the idea of Geula. So we're saying it's the vision of Yeshayahu. So it hints again, in a more open fashion, that the vision is about positive things, about Geula-dike things. And this is the uniqueness of the Haftorah of this Shabbos over the Haftorahs in the previous two Shabbosim, Shehem is Sefer Yirmiyahu. The prior two Shabbosim, Haftorahs from the Sefer of Yirmiyahu Hanavi, Ki b'negeh l'shem Yirmiyahu, concerning the name Yirmiyahu, yesh tzorech l'shanesh es tzerufei ha'osis l'farish u'm'lashon ram. We need to look at the letters differently and explain that Yirmiyahu is from the word exalted, even though in the simple reading of the text, it doesn't seem to indicate exaltedness. As opposed to the name Yeshayahu, that the simple meaning is from the word salvation. So therefore, of all the 3 weeks, of all the 3 Haftorahs, Chazon Yeshayahu emphasizes Geula even more than the inner message that might be hidden in the other prior to Haftorahs. Harishan. In a similar vein, we find something unbelievable concerning the first Tisha B'Av that was ever a negative occasion. As we know, even prior to the destruction of the 2 Bati Mikdashes, on Tisha B'Av, there was the event that on Tisha B'Av was when the Meraglim returned and they gave their bad report and they caused everybody to cry about going into Eretz Yisrael. And this resulted that the Yidden were kicked out of Eretz Yisrael and kicked out of the Beis HaMikdash in the following Tisha B'Avs, in the first Beis HaMikdash and the second Beis HaMikdash. So it says, Kishashov HaMeraglim, when the Meraglim returned, line 19, and it says, that all the entire congregation raised their voices and they cried that night. That night was the night of Erev. Doesn't mean the evening before, it means the night of Tisha B'Av. Hashem told them, you cried for nothing? I'll give you what to cry for. There are parents that say that to their kids. They make too much trouble and they're crying for nothing. Anyway, leave that for later. Isa b'Gemara, it's brought down the Gemara. On the 29th of Sivan, Moshe Rabbeinu sent out the Meraglim, the spies to Eretz Yisrael. It says, they returned from spying out the land at the end of 40 days. Over here, we subtract 40 days, you subtract 1. Beis Sivan, there were 2 days left in Sivan, the 29th and 30th. The Chav Tes Tammuz, there was 29 days of the month of Tammuz. So if you add 2 plus 29, Havalamed Aleph, you have 31. And then V'ches Me'ov, and then you had the 8 days travel from Av, you add 8 to 31. Havalamed Tes, you have 39. So therefore, why does it say 40 days if it was only 39 days? That's the question that the Gemara has. Amar Abaye answers, Tammuz Dahishaita Meluya Meluya. That Tammuz that year, even though nowadays when we have a fixed calendar, Tammuz is always what's called a chaser, and it only has 29 days, and Rish Chodesh Av is only 1 day. But that year they made it 30 days Tammuz. They turned it into 30 days. Though normally there's 29 days in Tammuz, how come? So that the 40 days should conclude in the 9th of Av, the date that the Meraglim returned from spying out the land. The Chsiv, that, like it says in the pasuk, Kara alai moyed, that they called it upon me a holiday, Lishbar Bachurai, to destroy my chosen one, to break my chosen one. Naktin on the Chodesh. Let's skip over the parentheses, the whole commentary. But the main thing is that they wanted to try to put together the date that he calls it a moyed, an appointed time, but moyed also means Yom Tov. Let's skip over to the last paragraph on the page 29. Nimtza comes out, that the entire idea of Tisha B'Av was established initially. That Hashem called it and prepared it an appointed time. He added a day of Rosh Chodesh. That's what the Moed means. In other words, that instead of being 1 day Rosh Chodesh Av, he added another day. And Rosh Chodesh is also called a Moed, a Yom Tov, because it's Asr B'Asiyas Malacha. Certain malachas we don't do on Rosh Chodesh. Umayid miyuchad hakashur im bnei Yisrael. It's a unique Yom Tov that's connected with the Yidden. Sharei Rosh Chodesh umayil Levana, because Rosh Chodesh is the birth of the new moon. V'Yisrael mainim Levana, and Yidden count according to the new moon. Katan minor lekatan. Yidden are called the minor one amongst the nations, the smallest amongst the nations. So they count what's called the minor luminary, which is the moon. So so in other words, the Yom Tov of the new moon has a special connection with the Yidden. Through making the month of Tammuz a full month of having 30 days instead of having it only 29 days. It's the fact that we have a full 30-day month that's called the perfection, the completion of the month. Through that, adding a Yom Tov, in other words, Hashem added a Yom Tov in that year. He added another day Rosh Chodesh in that year, so that it coincides with the time when the Meraglim would come back with the day that would eventually be Tisha B'Av. Meaning, what the Rebbe is saying is, it comes out that Hashem added a Yom Tov for the sake of Tisha B'Av. Why did Hashem add a Yom Tov for the sake of Tisha B'Av? Why did Hashem add another day of Rosh Chodesh for the sake of Tisha B'Av? To show us that what's the real meaning of Tisha B'Av? The real meaning of Tisha B'Av is Yom Tov. That's why already thousands of years earlier or 1,500 years earlier, whatever it was, in the times of the Midbar, it was already set up in such type of way where it would be added another day of Yom Tov, another day of Rosh Chodesh. So he says in the first line of the page, in the middle, through that is also revealed the inner idea of Tisha B'Av. That Tisha B'Av is also called a Yom Tov. That on Tisha B'Av we do not say supplication prayers. All the days prior to Tisha B'Av we do say Tachnun. On Tisha B'Av we don't say Tachnun because in the inner meaning of Tisha B'Av it's a Yom Tov, just like Hashem added a Yom Tov years ago by adding a day of Rosh Chodesh. Even after it was established the return of the spies for Tisha B'Av, since you didn't have free choice, every person is given freedom, because Yidden are not under the control of the constellations and other limitations of nature. They could have acted already then. When the Meraglim came back, they could have acted in such a way that they wouldn't have cried unnecessarily, and therefore wouldn't have resulted that years later there would have been the everlasting tears and crying for nothing, crying for something of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. And even after they cried for nothing in the wilderness on that first Tisha B'Av, they would have, the Yidden would have had the capability to immediately do tshuva, that reaches higher than the entire chain order of descent of all the worlds. Since tshuva comes from the highest part of the soul, beyond the chain order of descent of the soul powers, therefore spiritually tshuva reaches the highest most level, that's higher than the Seder Ishtalshlus. And after the story with the spies, they could have prevented the following Tisha B'Avs, and to nullify the crying for all generations that took place with the first destruction, the second destruction, in such a way there would not have been a need for comfort. And even now, that there is the crying for all times, for all generations, to such a degree that Tisha B'Av is something that's untoward and unwanted. It's still something that Hashem says, it called upon me a holiday. But the Yom Tov is in such a way that the kindnesses are concealed. There's a need to remove the covering. Then they'll see the idea of kindness in the way it's revealed to all. Until the idea of crying will be transformed to good. It says that Rabbi Akiva cried, and what does it mean? His eyes were pouring tears when he heard secrets of Torah. So we see that there's positive tears. So we could transform the negative tears into positive tears. Until the crying that's going to be when Mashiach comes, they will come back to Eretz Yisrael with tears. Obviously, these are good and positive tears, not something negative, not something bad, because that's what we have with the transformation. This is also emphasized in the Haftarah of Shabbos Chazon. The very idea of the Haftarah is connected with the idea of exile. Because Haftarah was established because the decree of the government, as the Rebbe many times brings down, the government in a certain period of time did not allow the Jewish people to read from the Torah, so instead they instituted to read the Haftarah to remind them of the Kriyas HaTorah. Usually it has to do with whatever the Torah reading is, but in certain occasions of the year, it primarily has to do with the period of the year. Afal became, still in all, even though Haftarah is connected with Golus, but in other words, it's a result of the decree of a terrible government. Still in all, the content of the Haftarah is positive. Still in all, the Haftarah itself is a vision of Yeshayahu, lo Yirmiyahu, not Yirmiyahu, eli Yeshayahu. That in his name is hinted the idea of salvation and redemption, like we said earlier. How much more so is it when it was recently revealed this saying of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Barditchev, Shabbos Chazon Marakosh Baruch Cholech Yisrael's Beis Hamikdash Shlishi. Then Shabbos Chazon Hashem shows every single Yid the third Beis Hamikdash. How much more so do we know that this Haftarah is a positive thing, not the opposite. But the Rebbe says, it's insufficient that the good is only internal, and in a way of concealed kindnesses. There's a need to draw it down in a revealed way, below 10 handbreadths. Like the Rebbe Marash told the Tzemach Tzedek, when the Tzemach Tzedek was speaking about a certain date when the Geula was supposed to come by, and when Mashiach didn't come, the Tzemach Tzedek explained that this was they just printed either Torah Oir. So the Rebbe Marash said that's fine and good, but that it has to do with Geula, and on some spiritual level it's like Mashiach came. But the Rebbe Marash told the Tzemach Tzedek, we need the redemption down here in the literal sense. She should nullify. Daloy is a Russian word, to completely be over the enslavement of the governments. And the literal sense down here, it should be like the Rambam says, that all pleasurable things should be as available as dust of the earth. And this is why there is this inspiration and the tumult lately to use out the 9 days to add in Torah study and tzedakah, according to what it says, Siyam b'mishpat, that the Tzion through Mishpat, Mishpat is going on the laws of the Torah, the halakhs of the Torah, Tipada will be redeemed, V'shaveh b'tzedakah, and its returnees with tzedakah, Kedei l'sayim Shiur agolos, to finish off the remnants of the exile, to add in Torah and tzedakah. And specifically, like we've spoken about lately, we have to put in extra effort to for yeshiva children that are under our mitzvah, to add with them in matters of Torah tzedakah, because they have the special advantages of the breath that has no sin. Because they are under bar mitzvah. Through their Torah study and their mitzvahs in general, we nullify the idea that says because of our sins, that's the cause, like it says in Musaf, that we were exiled from our land, by nullifying the cause of the exile, so automatically the result, which is the exile, becomes nullified as well. By the way, this is the summer of 1973. The summer of 1973, the Rebbe made a very, very big tumult, like he's saying now, that from the mouth of babes and nurslings, you will destroy the enemies and those that are trying to take revenge against the Eden and destroy the Eden. And the Rebbe, after the Yom Kippur Milchama broke out, the Yom Kippur War broke out in October of 1973, said, I didn't know why. I had this need and this urge, and I felt to encourage Jewish children in such a way, and quoting this pasuk to destroy the enemy. But now I see why I was possessed by this, because of this terrible thing that happened on Yom Kippur. So this was the months prior to the Yom Kippur War that the Rebbe was pushing so much about getting children to add and Torah and tzedakah and so on. Line 27, we have to be involved in this out of a great tumult. And to make this well known in every place, because we have to affect in it the redemption. To be able to connect it with an idea of actuality in Shabbos Chazon, it's appropriate. The Rebbe turned to all the children that were there in 770. There weren't that many children in the summer in 770, but still, whichever children were there in 770, he said that are under bar mitzvah, the boys and the girls should now say l'chaim. The Rebbe said, if they themselves will come up to the bima, eten lahem ba'atzmi loimer l'chaim. I will pour them myself. I will personally pour them to say l'chaim. The effect of children of yeshiva, hevel shein bechet. That's the breath that has no sin in it, like we said before. It says in the Gemara that the entire world only exists thanks to the breath of yeshiva students that are prior to bar mitzvah, that they do not have any sin. Tifos kiyama oilam ba'ofen the Eila Toldos Moli will affect the existence of the world in the way that it says Eila Toldos in the full, meaning with the letters Vav included, the way it was the beginning of creation, that the world was created complete and perfect. We should merit for the fact that from Chazon and what we say in davening, that our eyes should see in your return. Shabbos Chazon, we shall come to fulfilling the promise that our eyes should see when you will return with Sion, with mercy, the coming Mashiach Tzidkenu. All of them are concerning Mashiach. It says, Darach Koichem Yaakov, a star shoots out from Yaakov, come Shevet Yisrael, and a branch arose from Yisrael, Va'ad Yisrael Yisachoyel, till it says Yisrael is successful, Begula Mitzvah Shlema, and the true and complete redemption. And there it says in the brackets that the Rebbe poured personally to every single one of the boys and the girls that he poured into their cups that they should say l'chaim.